Carlos woke up to the shrill sound of his phone alarm. An old model with a cracked screen and a battery that barely lasted. Another day without answers, another day of trying. He got up slowly, stretching in the tiny room he rented at the back of an elderly woman's house. The place smelled of mildew, but it was all he could afford with the odd jobs he managed to pick up. He had sent out over 200 resumes in the past few months. Some companies never responded. Others promised a call that never came. Yet despite all the frustration, Carlos hadn't given up. He believed that dignity wasn't something you lost. It was something you carried even when the world tried to strip it away. That day he had an interview scheduled at a small tech company. It was his chance to start over. The problem was his clothes. His only dress shirt was stained and worn out. So he decided to step into a second-hand clothing store in downtown Los Angeles, hoping to find something decent at an affordable price. The store was bright and well-organized with a sign on the door that read, "Affordable style for everyone." Carlos entered quietly, browsing the racks. He found a light blue shirt, simple but elegant. The price? $29.90. He had $32 in his pocket and needed some of it to take the subway to the interview. "Excuse me," he said to the store owner, a well-dressed, middle-aged man who already looked impatient. "I really like this shirt. Would you be willing to do $25 for it?" The man frowned in disgust. "This is a store, not a charity. If you can't pay, then don't buy." "I'm not wasting my time on beggars trying to look like executives," he said loudly, drawing glances from other customers. Carlos felt his face burn. Some people chuckled quietly. Others just looked away. With trembling hands, he put the shirt back on the hanger and began to leave in silence, head down, doing his best to keep his composure. That's when, from the back of the store, a man stood up from the waiting couch. He wore worn-out jeans, a plain black t-shirt, and a baseball cap. His expression was serious, yet calm. No one seemed to have noticed him until that moment. He simply watched, with eyes that were both sharp and compassionate. Carlos stepped out onto the sidewalk, the harsh sunlight hitting him straight in the face. He felt shame, anger, sadness, all at once. What he didn't know was that the quiet observer in the store was about to change his life forever. ChatGPT. Carlos walked slowly down the sidewalk, feeling the weight of yet another humiliation. The interview was still a few hours away, but at that moment, all he wanted was to disappear. He sat on a bench across from a corner cafe and took a deep breath. He wondered if it was still worth trying, if it still made sense to believe that hard work would eventually pay off. As he stared at the ground, he heard a gentle voice beside him. "Excuse me, mind if I sit here?" It was the man from the store, the one who had been sitting in the back, quietly observing everything. Carlos hesitated, surprised. He just nodded. The man sat down beside him. There was something different about him. It wasn't just his simple appearance, there was a quiet peace about him, a silent kindness. "My name's Keanu. I saw what happened in there," he said plainly. Carlos tried to smile but couldn't quite manage it. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," Keanu continued. "No one deserves to be treated like that." Carlos shook his head, resigned. "It's not the first time, and probably won't be the last. But thank you for saying that." Keanu signaled to the cafe waiter, who noticed them sitting outside. He ordered 2 coffees. "You have an interview today, don't you?" Carlos's eyes widened. "How do you know?" "You were holding that shirt like it was a lifeline." "I've done that before." Carlos let out a weak laugh, surprised at how accurate the observation was. "I don't know if it's worth it anymore. I'm tired of chasing opportunities just to end up in situations like that. You know, sometimes it feels like we're invisible. Like the world only sees people who have something to offer. Money, status, connections." Keanu listened silently with genuine attention. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer advice, he just listened. When the coffee arrived, he slid one of the cups over to Carlos. "No one is invisible. But the world's too distracted to notice the right people." Carlos sat quietly for a few seconds, staring at this stranger who somehow made him feel seen. "You look familiar. Have I seen you somewhere before?" Keanu smiled but looked away modestly. "Maybe. But it doesn't matter who I am. What matters is who you are. And I see a man who hasn't given up. And that's more than most people have the courage to be." For the first time in weeks, Carlos felt a lump in his throat, not from frustration but from something far more rare, recognition. They sat there talking for over an hour. Keanu asked about Carlos's life, his dreams, what he wanted to do. Carlos talked about his education, the jobs he had held, the parents he lost early, and the daily fight to hold on to his dignity. As the time for the interview drew near, Carlos stood up. I have to go. Even if I don't get the job, at least I'm going to try. Keanu pulled something from his pocket. A simple card with just a name and a number. If you ever need me, call. Anytime. Carlos took the card with some hesitation but thanked him. Thanks for the coffee, and for listening. Keanu shook his hand firmly. We'll see each other again, Carlos. And with that, they went their separate ways. But something inside Carlos had shifted. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone. What he didn't know was that this seemingly casual meeting was just the beginning of something that would not only change his life, but the lives of many others around him. 2 days had passed since the interview. Carlos was at home, sitting on the same mattress he slept on, still wearing the dress clothes he had worn, not out of laziness, but because he didn't have anything else clean. His phone, tossed beside him, buzzed occasionally with useless notifications. Promotions, ads, automated messages. Then a call came through from an unknown number. Hello? He answered, his voice tired. Mr. Carlos de Souza? This is Amanda from the law firm Reeves and Grant. Do you have a moment to talk? Carlos frowned, confused. A law firm? Yes, sir. We've been retained by a client to handle certain matters on your behalf. We're preparing to transfer financial assets and initiate a wealth management process in your name. Carlos was silent for a few seconds. He thought it was a prank. Sorry, I think you've got the wrong Carlos. I can barely pay my rent. The woman chuckled softly but kindly. Mr. Carlos, the client in question is Mr. Keanu Reeves. The name hit him like a brick. That man from the cafe? What? That doesn't make any sense. I barely know him. We just had coffee. He informed us that he intends to donate half of his personal assets to you, including stocks, properties, and a substantial amount in liquid funds. He also asked us to arrange enrollment for you in technical and language courses. There is also a job offer if you're interested at one of the NGOs he supports. Carlos felt the world spin. He had to sit down. This must be a mistake. What? Why would he do that? The lawyer responded with a firm yet warm voice. His words were, because no one helps someone like that just because they deserve it. He needs to understand that his worth doesn't depend on money, but maybe money can help him remember that. Carlos felt his eyes fill with tears. This wasn't just help, it was a new chance to exist with dignity, with possibilities. For the first time in a long while, he had a choice. In the days that followed, everything happened quickly. A discreet team handled paperwork, bank accounts were opened, a furnished apartment was offered, with no strings attached, just as an option. Carlos declined most luxuries but accepted the education, the support, the guidance. Keanu never showed up again. Never called. Never sent a message. But Carlos knew he was around. He didn't need to see him to feel his presence. It was as if the gesture had not been made to draw attention, but to restore something that had been lost, in the world and within himself. At the end of that week, Carlos wrote a letter. Not to send but to keep. Read. You didn't save me with money. You saved me with respect. For seeing me when the world didn't. And for believing in me when I had already stopped believing in myself. Carlos didn't know yet what he would do with so much. But he knew what he wouldn't do, waste it. Time passed. 3 months later, anyone who saw Carlos walking the streets of Los Angeles might not recognize the man who, just weeks earlier, had been humiliated for trying to buy a shirt. His hair was now trimmed, his beard shaved. He didn't wear expensive clothes, but he was clean, put together, and carried a steady gaze. More than anything, something inside him had awakened, something far beyond appearance. After much reflection, Carlos decided not to accept the direct job offer made by Keanu. Instead, he used part of the resources he had received to create his own project, an organization called Second Chance, aimed at helping unemployed people rebuild their lives with emotional support, professional guidance, and dignity. He rented a modest space downtown, hired a small team of social workers and instructors, and with help from friends and former battle companions, he began doing what Keanu had done for him: listening. The stories Carlos heard every day echoed his own journey. Smart, capable men and women, broken by a system that discarded them after their first fall. People who had been swallowed by the silence of invisibility. Second Chance quickly became a support hub for dozens of vulnerable individuals. They received training, clothing for interviews, transportation, and, above all, respect. Carlos made it a point to learn every name, to sit down and share a coffee with every new participant. One morning, as he arrived at the community center, Carlos found a plain envelope on his desk. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. Keep doing this. You got it? With care, K. Carlos smiled. He didn't need anything more. By the end of 6 months, his initiative had already helped over 200 people find jobs, shelter, or at the very least, enough dignity to keep moving forward. The story began circulating quietly on social media, but always without details. Carlos never spoke about Keanu, and Keanu never appeared publicly by his side. It was as if there was a silent agreement between them. Helping didn't need an audience. During a talk to a group of homeless youth, Carlos said something that would stay in everyone's memory. The world will try to measure you by what you have, not by who you are. But know this, those who see value in people are the ones who change reality. Someone saw value in me. And today I see it in you. The applause came with everyone on their feet. But Carlos knew that moment wasn't his alone. It belonged, too, to a man who preferred to stay far from the spotlight. A man who used his fame not to show off, but to bring silence where the world screamed. The Second Chance Project grew every day, helping hundreds of people rediscover their dignity and strength to start over. Carlos became a known figure in some social circles but always kept a low profile, avoiding the spotlight and interviews. In an interview with a small local channel, he was asked about the source of the help that transformed his life. Carlos smiled and answered sincerely. It was a gesture that changed everything, but the most important thing is that it doesn't matter who helps. What matters is who accepts the help and what you do with it. I just want my story to show that even in the worst situations, there is hope. When pressed to reveal the name of the man who made the donation, he simply said, "Sometimes people choose to stay silent so their actions speak louder than their words." On social media, Carlos's story began to go viral, and many people started guessing who the mysterious benefactor might be. Some suspected Keanu Reeves, already known for his discreet acts of generosity. But no confirmation was ever given, and perhaps never would be. Carlos understood that true greatness was exactly this: the humility of those who help without expecting recognition. The hero's silence was an invitation for all of us to look around and realize that simple gestures, even when anonymous, have the power to change lives. One sunny afternoon, Carlos walked through the park where he had met Keanu. He looked up at the sky, felt the wind on his face, and whispered one word: "Thank you." At that moment he needed nothing more. Because true generosity doesn't seek glory or applause. It is present in silence, discretion, and the courage to believe the world can be better, one person at a time. And so, the story of an invisible man who was given a chance, and a kind stranger who gave half of everything, became a legacy of hope for many who, like Carlos, are still waiting for their turn.